I'm Dana Griffin from the North Florida Fly Fishers. What we're going to tie here today is an unusual fly with a rich history called the Invicta. That's a word out of the Latin language that means invincible or unconquerable, a pretentious name for a fly, since it implies that it'll never fail you and all flies will fail sometime, somewhere. This is sort of the southern version of the Invicta. Comes with a bead head, which I've already tied in. We're tying it on a 3x long streamer hook, doing just a standard thread wrap to get our thread base established. This fly started out as a fly to be used in England because the original tyer, one James Ogden, tied it to imitate the young of brown trout. He'd taken note of the fact that as brown trout get older and older, they increasingly turn away from insects as their primary food, and they go in for foraging on smaller fish, including their own kind. Brown trout are not adverse to becoming cannibals. So he tied this in the hopes of catching a large brown trout. Where we fish this fly here in the deep south, we don't have brown trout, certainly not in Florida where I'm from. But it turns out brim like it just as well as brown trout do. So what we do is we start out by tying in a copper rib and then the tail material, rather unusual for a southern fly. It consists of the crest feathers from a golden pheasant. Golden pheasants are native to Southeast Asia, but there is a population that has escaped, caged birds that escaped in England and established a feral population there. And so these crest feathers may very well have come from either caged birds or from birds that escaped into the wild but are no longer in Southeast Asia. The body material is going to be ice dub, a synthetic material that lends a lot of sparkle to a fly, and in some of the darker waters that this fly is fished in, a little added sparkle doesn't hurt. So we use this ice dub, dubbing on a nice body going clear up close to the bead. And at that point, we're going to tie in a long saddle hackle that will be palmered. While palmer and two palmer are words that are used almost exclusively today in the context of dressing flies, the original meaning of the word was to refer to actually a caterpillar. I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but it looked like this, a palmer worm. And so since the result in a fly is to produce an elongated body with what looked like lots of feelers or processes sticking out, the resemblance to the caterpillar was so close that it was logical to start calling this palmering. We'll leave that part of the feather intact until we're ready to cut it loose. And now what we're going to do is move our copper wire ribbing up the body, zigzagging it through the fibers so we do not trap any of them. And once we get up here, we're ready to move to our next material. In the original pattern that Mr. Ogden described in a book he wrote, this is back in the 1860s, he called for a beard. That's a clump of feathers tied on the underside of a fly. He called for a beard to be tied using the shoulder patch of the European jay. That is both fairly unusual material to find in U.S. fly tying catalogs, plus it can be a bit expensive. So what I have found out, and this is fairly good news, is that southern brim cannot tell the difference in European jay and in just blue-dyed guinea. So we're going to go with blue-dyed guinea as the beard. It'll be tied in the typical position that a beard would be tied in, which is under the shank of the hook. The exact color. And then our last item that we're going to tie in is a little rust-colored hen hackle. It'll be tied in as a collar. Sometimes women see better than the other. Something to do with And it's tied in the space along the shank of the hook that is just to the just between the beard and where the bead is located. So we'll wrap it around. Here we go, 3 or 4 wraps. Then we'll tie her off. The rotary head hackle plier is very useful for this kind of operation because it allows you to maneuver the hackle plier in planes that you cannot maneuver with a normal fixed head hackle plier. So it's a very useful instrument. And then we're going to use our whip finishing tool to really stabilize the head of this fly so that it's not about to come loose on us, fall apart. So we've got 2 items to cut loose. We're going to cut loose the thread, opening up the jaws of the scissors so that we won't cut any of the hackles that we took such pains to put on. And then we take off the remaining end of the polymered hackle that we no longer need. And there is the Invicta Fly.